Good evening, Democrats. My name is Betty Yee. I'm your California State Controller and also the proud Vice Chair of this California Democratic Party. I hope that you've been getting fired up in the caucus meetings over the last couple of days and are taking action and continuing to take action to stop the Republican recall by participating in the friend banking and learning how to utilize the organizing potential of mobilize.org. We have much important business to tend to during this executive board meeting, but the most important thing for the next now 19 days is to be sure that we get every single registered Democrat in California to vote no on the recall. If Democrats turn out, we win. It's that simple. Are you committed to do your part to make sure Democrats vote no on this recall? Let us hear from you in the chat by typing in "yes, we can" in the chat. I see your energy, Democrats. I feel your energy, and I know we can do this. Like former President Obama said once, Democrats do big things. And one of those big things is electing women. Of the 143 women currently serving in the United States Congress, 104 of them are Democrats. And the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, our very own Californian. Senators Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer were the first two women to represent a state together in the United States Senate. And before Karen Bass was in Congress, she was the first Black woman to be the Speaker of any legislative body in the country. We know that our great president, Vice President Kamala Harris, who broke one of the highest glass ceilings in politics, hails from our Golden State as well. And if I might add, I'm happy and proud to be joining those ranks as well as an Asian American woman elected to statewide office in California. And by the way, only the 10th since statehood to be elected to a statewide constitutional office. We've got much more work to do. I can go on with the many ways that we as Democrats, and especially California Democrats, have been trailblazers in electing women. However, we still have a ways to go until we have gender equity in politics. And that's the focus of our conversation this evening. How can we overcome the obstacles and seize the opportunities to elect more women Democrats to office? I will be your moderator this evening of this tremendous conversation with some stellar panelists this evening. And I'm going to introduce each panelist as I pose them a question. But first, let me just say, we're talking about obstacles and opportunities. And because I'm an eternal optimist, I want to talk about the opportunities. And so we're very happy to be putting on this salon this evening with the Women's Caucus of the California Democratic Party. And I see our chairwoman, Carolyn Fowler, in the audience. And also with Emerge California, Melanie Ramil, who is the executive director of Emerge California. I'm just going to invite her to come just open this up because I think there's a lot to look forward to. Melanie is a proud Californian and a daughter of Filipino immigrants. And I think she's living her dream job, training women to run and win elected office. Emerge California, and I think there are a lot of Emerge sisters with us this evening, is changing the face of elected power and building a world where leaders are fighting for justice and equity. And Melanie, I know you have learned during your time that what you have learned during your time at Emerge California about what it takes to run for office. So many in our audience want to know, but tell us the good news about what's on the horizon.
Controller Yee, so happy to be here with you, especially on Women Equality Day. It's so fitting that we're having this conversation. And I too am a relentless optimist and idealist, so I will frame everything as an opportunity with you. I want to talk about the trends we've been seeing in Emerge California because I know these are the trends statewide and nationwide as we're seeing women run. You know, as I really started to think about what we're seeing right now, we'll be going into our third election cycle in 2022 after 2016. That time that we will never forget, that we know mobilized so many of us to get involved and to stand up for what we knew was right. So we knew what 2018 looked like. We know what 2020 looked like as far as women breaking barriers in politics. And I'm confident, especially from seeing Emerge California women continuing to run, train with us, that we will see the same number of women running in 2022. And those big numbers again of women stepping up to represent their communities. not only women Democrats, but also women who are really representative of the communities, because we have really started to feel and understand what representative leadership looks like. When those in office who've been closest to the pain and closest to their communities are in office, it makes such a difference. And we've been seeing that time and time and again as women get elected into these spaces for the first time. I'm also going to say that a trend we've been seeing is that not only are women getting elected, but they're starting to get elected to those higher offices, those executive positions. I'll tell you, Controller Yee, before 2020, out of the 800 women we trained at Emerge California, a handful were mayors. Of course, many know San Francisco Mayor London Breed, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, and a few others served as mayors throughout the state of California, of 482 cities. After the 2020 election, we now have 18 mayors from our alum network throughout the state of California. And whether that's because they had started to serve as pro tem or got outright elected as mayor, our women are stepping up into the higher executive positions. And they are city executives, they are city attorneys, they are running for judge. And so the positions they're holding are looking much different than they had over the past years. I also want to share that something we've been seeing at Emerge California is what we call Emerge California Caucuses. There are now so many cities, 11 cities throughout the state that have more than one Emerge California alum. And I'm going to say this is a trend for women statewide, is that as more women hold office, we know that we need more of us in those seats next to us at the dais. So we're seeing a more concerted effort by women to mentor other women, to make sure we're inviting and asking those women that we see as leaders into this space with us. A quick example, in Suisun City in Solano County, out of a city council of 5 members, 3 of them are Emerge California alum, including the mayor and the mayor pro tem. And finally, I know this is something that we're so excited about, is that over the next 3 election cycles, especially in 2024 and 2026, we will see 90 seats in the California State Legislature turnover. That is huge. And what a huge opportunity for women, especially as more and more women are serving in office. We are ready for that next step, and we are ready to break the 30% threshold of seats that we've held at this time. So I'm excited for the next steps and all these opportunities ahead, Controller.
Thank you, Melanie. And just really a lot of promise. And I know all of the women on our panel this evening are already getting a head start, looking ahead. And I want to just invite Supervisor Katrina Foley. You're the first woman Democrat elected to the Orange County Board of Supervisors in history, and the first Democrat to hold this seat. And you know, since 1894. And so first of all, congratulations. You've had like zero runway to really mount a campaign and get elected. And I just wanted to ask a couple questions. One is, did you feel your campaign was helped or hindered by your gender? And then what are you seeing on the horizon with respect to, you know, just local races and local seats?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all these amazing women. Hello, Democrats. I absolutely believed that my campaign was benefited from me being a woman. It was because, first of all, I was the only endorsed woman Democrat on the ballot. So that helped also. But also at a time right now when we are dealing with COVID and family issues and trying to protect our community, I think we needed somebody who is used to caring for families and used to caring for the community to be able to sort of be brave enough to stand up against, in Orange County, what has been essentially enabling of an anti-science, anti-vax, anti-mask kind of rhetoric. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of the work that we did. We had so many women's organizations that really just invested in our campaign, both from time and treasure. And then, of course, the party was incredibly supportive in helping our campaign. First woman Democrat ever elected in Orange County. And we are making sure that we fulfill all the promises that we made. We're working on accountability and transparency and kind of blowing up Orange County government in a sense, because making sure that people know what we're doing with the $7.7 billion budget, making sure that we're caring for the homeless in our community, making sure that our workers are protected and that that we have housing here in Orange County for people who, can't afford to live here anymore, making sure that our climate action policies are in place and that we have a plan for the future. We have beautiful coastlines and open spaces, and we really need to protect it. So I'm really ecstatic. I have a woman chief of staff, and this is really important. And Emerge, thank you for all you're doing in Orange County too. But we have many alumni who are mayors and city council members here in Orange County. But what's important too is that as women, we're bringing other women along. So my chief of staff is an African-American woman. We have our district director is a woman. We have appointed women across the board onto boards and committees and commissions, Democrat women that had never had a place in Orange County on boards and commissions, in making sure that we have policies that reflect our core values. Ada Bresenia is my appointee to the Human Relations Commission here in Orange County. She's our party chair as well here in Orange County. So yes, we do make a difference. And I'm hopeful, because I did a little research before this call, and we have 89 elected women Democrats in Orange County right now. We have a lot more work to do, but 89, that's an incredible start. And we'll get more coming this next cycle. I'm up for reelection, and I've run 6 times in the last 5 years because of the way that the special election worked. So I don't ever give up, and somehow the energy from the campaign and all the people in the community, it just fuels me. But I do think that we have to support women in a bigger way to be able to really encourage women to step into this space. Right now is probably the most difficult time in my 20 years of serving in public office that I've ever had. And it is because of the rhetoric and the abuse really that we are enduring as public officials. And I know I don't want to get ahead of us, but we do need to support women, don't take them for granted, and make sure that we're lifting them up and supporting them once they get there too.
Thank you, Katrina, and really great points. And I think you'll hear from all of the women tonight that we have a special personal commitment to be sure that we are lifting other women. And it's going to be a whole ecosystem that we're going to be developing together. I'm going to ask both Danielle and Patrice to come on board, because these are 2 amazing women who provide a lot of support and a lot of smarts to campaigns. And so I'm going to start with you, Patrice, because you're an educator, you're a community advocate, and you're involved with just so many different organizations. And I know you particularly use your voice to speak about issues of equity and justice, and particularly power building in marginalized communities. And so, first of all, thank you for being here. But I wanted to address this issue about women of color, and just how important women of color are in terms of being one of the strongest pillars of our Democratic coalition. Do you feel women of color face specific challenges when running for office, and is it getting better? If you do.
Good evening, Controller Yin. Thank you so much for having me. I will say that there is tremendous opportunity in that you see women of color, and specifically Black women, that are working and organizing in all facets of their community. They may be leading PTAs, they're leading their neighborhood councils, their block clubs, their homeowner associations, et cetera. So they are already serving in roles where they are leading and organizing. I think what is needed most is having conversations with women so that they can see that that same skill set is the exact same skill that you will use in public office. So it's about transitioning the mindset so that people see that there's a place for them in public office, and that their expertise, their voice, their power, their core, and their commitment to public service has a role in a legislative function and has an opportunity to really be able to shape policy that benefits a broader audience. And to your point about are there opportunities or challenges, I would say that in addition to people needing to see more women of color in elected leadership, I think sometimes there can be an economic barrier. Some of it is perceived, some of it is very real. It's harder for women in general to raise money, but it's especially harder for women of color because they may not necessarily have family ties or roots or a network that can say, oh, I'll write you $1,000 check, no problem. So I think that being able to also have those conversations about what money and politics looks like and know that it's not just for wealthy people, that you can give someone $10 a month and that $10 a month will really make a difference in terms of helping women be successful in winning their campaign. And so just sort of help people reframe how they see money, how they use their money, and how they give their money. I personally make it a point to give money to women candidates. I just think that if I'm going to want to see them in office, I have to invest in them. So I have a roster of women that I give money to. I give them monthly so that, instead of necessarily having a Starbucks habit, I don't have one of those. So I give that money to candidates. And I talk to people all the time about how they can make small dollar investments in candidates. And so that money goes really, really far.
That's great. Those are great points, Patrice. And I want to come back to just some of the obstacles and challenges. But let me turn to Danielle because just in terms of the perception of women, and Danielle Sendejas is a strategist with more than 15 years of experience working on campaigns and advancing progressive causes. In 2009, she joined the Strategy Group's Los Angeles office after working as an organizer on President Barack Obama's campaign. So Danielle, welcome. And in terms of the perception of women, you've done a lot of polling for candidates, and just wanted to see if you could share briefly any insight that you found about polling when you're polling for women running for office.
Well, thank you, Controller Yee, and thank you, the California Democratic Party, for having me today. And shout out to Emerge California. I'm on the campaign assessment team for Southern California, as well as training with them, and also very involved. I was telling the supervisor earlier, we love seeing progress in Orange County, and so thank you for being here. And I think that's it. It's progress, right? Voters are starting to see the value in women's leadership, and some of this has to do with what we saw in 2018, across the country and here in California, there were a lot of candidates who stepped up to run for Congress. And more often than not in those primaries, women won. And so when we talk about the great gains that we made in the House of Representatives, it was really a pink wave. It was really women who ran in really tough places like Katie Porter in Irvine and, and Katie Hill in the Santa Clarita Valley, who stepped up and said, we have a story to tell. We're going to tell it authentically, and we're going to be true to ourselves and not get really pitted into the back and forth of the political, the political dynamics that are usually at play when you have a lot of those Democrat versus Republican seats. So I think women we're seeing, they're stepping up. They have a great story to tell. Voters are receptive to it, and they're really interested in what it has to offer. And I think to Patrice's point, relating to somebody who is a PTA mom is, something that a lot of voters, understand. It's something that they value and that they, want to say, oh, you're like me. You're just trying to get your kid to soccer practice and try to get to the drive-thru at Starbucks in the morning before you got to pick up the next thing. And so people who, sharing those stories about you're like me, you have an authentic piece. And I think as we see power in the Democratic Party being women as our base of voters, being suburban women, people who, are really kind of just, and as we've also seen in this pandemic, who has suffered the most that we have seen from a policy standpoint, it has been women. So there's a lot at stake. And I think as we start to recruit candidates and we start to see, especially for the mother load, as our friends at Close the Gap call it, and I've got my Elect More Women shirt on here from the California Women's List. But we're really building this ecosystem because we understand what it takes. We understand how unique it is to run in California, to make that leap into the legislature. And we want to ensure sure that the apparatus around us, the party activists who are here, the Women's Caucus, and all of the other pieces that at play are ready to receive these women, because we know from the voter standpoint, they want them and they want to elect them, and they find them compelling as candidates.
That's terrific. Thank you, Danielle. You know, it's interesting because I think what I'm hearing from each of you, you know, we're talking about definitely lots of opportunities on the horizon, but also how to navigate some of the obstacles. And I think in each of your responses, you really have shown that you're kind of mowing down those obstacles as we speak, right? And so I did want to just take a moment to just talk about the times that we're in, and really thinking about how, and Katrina, maybe I'll start with you, because you know, Republicans have a stronghold in Orange County, and they seem to be using tactics like this recall to, you know, that we're all fighting to defeat, to stack the deck in their favor. We saw what they did with a couple of the congressional seats in Orange County with, you know, putting up, you know, really conservative API women. Are you worried that the wave of anti-democratic efforts by the Republicans could result in lowering the number of women in office?
You know, I'm not, and here's why. I think that in Orange County, we are now seeing record number of Democrats. And so we have more Democrats in Orange County than we have Republicans. Now, if you live in Northern California, you don't know that, because all you hear about are these extremists that are coming out of Orange County. But the general public, they just want people who focus on the issues. Like Danielle was talking about, if you're the PTA mom, which I was, if you're the high school football booster mom, which I was, which if you have some connection to some community organizations, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever it may be, they just want someone that they know, whether Republican or Democrat, that's going to focus on the issues. I think women tend to focus on issues. They put forth issues and they don't get caught up in all of the politicization of the campaign. So I am not afraid of the recall proponents. In Orange County, they are trying to recall all of the Democrat school board members right now. I actually got recall petitions for me already, and it got rejected, so we're okay for now. But this is a strategy because they can't win under a fair fight. So they're trying to use tactics that give them some kind of a perceived advantage. But I think what we're going to see is that there is no advantage. People can see right through the manipulation, and they will come out to vote, and we'll keep our seats, and the governor will keep his seat, and we'll defeat all of these recall attempts that are really from extremists. They're not even moderate Republicans. They're not regular Republicans. These are extremists. These are people that are insurrectionists. These are people who really do not reflect, I don't think, any mainstream values at all.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think, you know, Patrice and Danielle, in your work, you know, certainly, you know, the recall and the tactics that Republicans are using, the misinformation, disinformation around all of the, you know, pandemic related issues, kind of your thoughts about what this means in terms of, you know, the success of more women getting elected.
I think it's incumbent upon us to have conversations with our friends, family, neighbor, peer groups about what facts are, what's accurate and what is not. Talking in real plain terms about what's at stake, what we stand to gain, what we stand to lose in this recall election. I know I've been having conversations, I've been sharing on my social media and letting people know when people ask me, what happens if there's a yes vote, what happens if there's a no vote? And so if we can share that information out with our network, because we're the ones that people trust. So if we are that trusted messenger, get that message out to your network and it'll ripple in terms of growing and sharing, because I don't want a Republican to have the opportunity to roll back all of the progress that California has made in terms of policy, how it benefits women, how it benefits our economic mobility, how it benefits our reproductive health, how it benefits just general pandemic public health. We cannot afford to go back. So everything that we need to do, we need to get how we mobilize, organize, get on phone trees, get on email trains, get on text trains, and spread the word as far and wide as we can. Go through your address book and let anybody that you know that it's critical and vital to the success of us being women and continue to be able to be women, that we have to vote no on this recall. That's what we have to do right now in the next 19 days.
Excellent.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, the big thing to remember is the national implications, right? Politics doesn't, we all say politics is local, but they do have national implications. We don't live in a silo of information. So what happens here in California, there's a lot of anticipation that if the recall is successful, and we don't do the work we need to do as Democrats, then Virginia all of a sudden becomes very vulnerable. And then what does that mean for the midterms? And so what we need to do here in California is just stop the red wave from even being, possible, and make it much harder for Republicans to get any momentum nationwide, because we don't live in this only what happens in California matters for California. It does have national and international implications. And so, I think to the Republicans' point, one of the things that we saw in 2020 was that Republican women actually made gains. So you saw more, we had the pink wave in 2018, they had their own pink wave in 2020. And so I think what we're going to continue to see happening is that they see the value of women's leadership now. And so they're starting to recruit folks. They, pushed new women into their leadership. And so if we're, wanting to combat, that means we really do need to invest in this pipeline. And we really do need to make sure that women are, the importance of Orange County and what the national implications are, in some of those swing seats that are going to continue to be Inland Empire. Same thing as we're seeing where the population in our state is going. We want to make sure that we have women who are ready to step up when those seats are available, and that we have the future of leadership, ready to go when needed, because we know what the Republicans are doing it, because they're already doing it. And we need to make sure we keep our competitive advantage. Absolutely.
No, great point, Danielle. Brings us right back to Melanie because she's doing it. So let me just ask you, this is something that I wished when I first started even thinking about running for office, that there was just so much support. Emerge California, the premier training ground for so many women contemplating running for office at all levels, to look at just many of the women's organizations who are being helpful with the fundraising aspect of campaigns. But I wanted to just kind of bring it back down to some of the practical considerations of running, because there are obstacles. And I don't know that, for example, in my own life, that I would have thought about running if I had small children at home. So, it was a decision very personal. I think it's a decision personal to every woman. But tell us about some of the things that are, those types of practical considerations that you're seeing in your Emerge classes. I know you just had a legislative boot camp as well. But I know each of you here, because I'm going to ask each of you to talk about this. You're working through it because you see those as obstacles. You want to bat them down. And I know, Mel, you've already started to do that. So maybe we'll start with you.
Of course. Thanks, Controller. And just to circle back to what Danielle was saying on her last point, and actually what I saw in the chat, is there something going on with conservatives really looking at school board and starting to look at these lower level entry points for office. And so when we talk about building the pipeline, I think one way we can uplift women is just continuing to talk about all the entry points into elected and political office. So I think that as folks think about changing the world in elected office and serving in these positions, that is great. And then the next conversation is really exploring what that political pathway will look like. Sometimes off the bat, people think that the only opportunities are city council, county supervisor, mayor. There are tens of thousands of special district positions, obviously school board positions throughout the state. And if we can uplift women by also educating each other and sharing with each other what these positions look like, we can get into these spaces. We're electing more women and more Democratic women into these offices up and down the state that hadn't had representation by Democratic women before. So I just wanted to bring up that point. Special district is a place where I always wanted to talk about building the pipeline. And of course, school board, again, as we're starting to see more conservatives really target these seats and starting to bring those fights to that real local level. But as far as Controller, to your question, what we're seeing at Emerge California, you're right. I think it is definitely a personal journey for each woman as they consider running for office. One thing that I love, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf always comes and says, it's never the perfect time, which on the flip side of that is it's always the perfect time, right? So there can always be a reason to and not to run. And so we really look to making sure we're having these conversations. And the number one thing that I know our alum, so many women here, I see a lot of our Emerge California sisters, is the sisterhood we build at Emerge California. The best part of my job is meeting the 800 alumni throughout the state who have gone through the program. There is a real bond and link between Emerge California women. Because of the experience of running for office as a woman and being in the political space, a patriarchal space that was not built for us, a space that we are disrupting every single day just by being women in the political space, it creates a bond between ambitious, bold, brilliant women who are looking and leading in this way that hasn't been traditional in our past. And so as we talk about women's journey to office, I think it's that sisterhood and that bond that is helping women see themselves as elected leaders, having a cavalry behind us as we're fighting what we know as attacks. As Supervisor said, it's one of your hardest times in office, all the attacks coming your way. And so that's what the Emerge California Sisterhood is for. And it can move beyond the Emerge California Sisterhood specifically, just women supporting women and being in this space together to remind ourselves that we should be here, we should be running, we are qualified, we are the ones that should be in this space, and we should be running for higher office. We should be running for the executive positions and for mayor. We should be looking at the open seats in 2024 and 2026 and having real conversations about what that looks like. And thank you. Yes, we just finished our first ever legislative boot camp. We just celebrated our 19th birthday as Emerge California. And the best way we celebrated was training 30 women, mostly our alum sisters and mostly those who hold local office today, to be looking at those seats in the legislature and Congress, because we know those are a different kind of fight and race. And we know that's the next level. And we want our Democratic women and our sisters to be prepared.
That's great. Thank you, Melanie. You know, it's interesting because, you know, this is all of you are just making me feel so hopeful about having women as decision makers at every level of our government. And it's so important. You know, we talked about the school boards, and I don't want to mention her name, but the former education secretary in the prior administration, you know, that was their tactic, was just to look at school boards around the country, but more importantly, to fund them, you know, in their races. So, and I think there's always an advantage when we can have candidates who are there who can relate to the voters, as Danielle says, you know, there's and Patrice, and you know, just this whole infrastructure about how we connect women to. You talked about representative leadership, but it's also kind of proximate leadership, right? Being closest to just the experiences that people are living every single day. And so to Danielle and to Patrice, and Patrice, let me go to you first. You're very involved with LawPi, and I'm a big fan. But talk about the work of LawPi, because it goes beyond just kind of the aspect of you know, running for elected office. It really is leadership development, but also very much policy laden.
So I will say, full disclosure, LawPi is the Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute. It is a nonpartisan organization, but we specialize in women's leadership development for and by Black women. And I think that the secret sauce that makes LawPi so special is the brilliance and the value and the richness and robustness of the network of women. We have 355 graduates from our first class in 2004 until now. And it's not hard to make 1 or 2 phone calls or go in any room and you will find a LawPi sister there. So there are many women who have run for office, many who want to be better community leaders, better volunteers, better policymakers, want to get appointed to appointed positions in boards and commissions, and also want to be able to become lobbyists. So they're looking at all of the ways that they can sort of infiltrate and sort of populate this ecosystem of politics and policy making, so that you have Black women, you have women of color, you have women who are able to support the candidates who run for office, to support the elected leaders who serve in office, because behind every elected person is a village of people that help them do their job. And so you need the right people who are trained, prepared, and knowledgeable to make sure that your elected leaders are successful. Once we get all these 90 women into the legislature, we need to make sure that they can get there, stay there, and get their bills passed. So we're training women to sort of come into all of those areas and help women be successful. I also will say that in terms of women running for office and it being the right time in their life and, balancing sort of your family life and your career and running for office, it is a challenge. But in the same way that we balance everything else, if we find a way to have someone, watch kids, support kids. I don't have children, but I will watch a child, babysit a child, and support a woman in that way. If I need to bring dinner, send dinner, have it delivered, to make sure that we're doing those small things to help women so that they can go out and they can campaign and win and support us later and help us lead us later. We all have to do those small things. So in addition to giving them our money, our time, and our resources, those small things in terms of, I'll pick your kids up from school, I'll take them to practice, I will make sure that they have dinner. Those things go far, far, far in helping women be successful as a candidate too. So just think about all the ways that you can stand in the gap for a woman to make sure that she doesn't have to feel like she can't step forward and lead because of what her life looks like.
Those are excellent, great points. And I think there's a role for each of us to play there in terms of just filling some of those needs. And I know, Melanie, you actually were successful in getting some grant dollars to particularly focus attention on childcare relative to emerge training, right?
Exactly. Yes. Thank you, Controller. And Patrice, I 100% agree. I love how you said stand in the gap for our sisters to make sure we can lift one another up to run. My first year as a Emerge California Executive Director was in 2019. And with that class, one of the things I saw was that some of our program members were missing training because they had caregiving issues, and at the last minute their childcare would fall through and they weren't able to come. And to me, that really spoke volumes again about these huge barriers that women continue to face in running for office. And so what my team and I decided to do was stand up what we now call our childcare grant. In 2019, it was the first initiative we got off the ground when I was executive director. And what that did was it continued to reduce tuition for Emerge California women with caregiving duties so that they could get childcare at the last minute. So even during the pandemic, when we were training virtually, a number of our program members told me that they used those funds to buy online programming for their children while we were online on Zoom for 8 hours a day. So kind of standing in the gap, Patrice, I 100% agree. As individuals, as organizations, can we be innovative and continuing to find ways to lift up women with those barriers that we know exist?
That's terrific. Thank you. Danielle and Katrina, I'm going to ask you both kind of similar questions. And Danielle, you as a strategist, and Katrina as a candidate and as an elected official, we are talking about, just obviously supporting more women running for office, but I want to talk about the rest of the campaign universe and infrastructure. And I'm just your experience in terms of whether donors and bundlers maybe treat women differently or equally when running for office, and what about campaign consultants? I mean, what does that whole kind of ecosystem look like today, and are we seeing change there? And I'm reminded that in the 2018 cycle, I believe we had so many women running for office across the country and not all of them succeeded, but I know that I've met several women across the country who actually became part of campaign infrastructure. So what are you seeing in that space? Maybe we'll start with Danielle.
Sure. So I think, what we are seeing is a lot of, the presidential campaigns really are breeding grounds for future consultants and future strategists. I certainly came from the Obama campaign. And what we are seeing too is women who want to get into the consulting space, and women candidates are taking a chance on women consultants, which is fantastic. And it's really, wonderful to see people who are mindful of the team who, reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, I just really want to work with a woman because I think you'll understand what I'm going through and you'll understand how to tell my story. And, when we think about the electorate and we think about the majority of Californians, a lot of them are millennial women. And so if we were talking, learning how to talk to millennial women about women candidates, sometimes sometimes it's about making a piece of mail that's talking a little bit about shoes or a little bit about something that is going on in, our lives. And, I have wonderful male colleagues who support me and support my career and our feminism, but it is one of those things where there's sometimes where it's like, oh, I understand what you're talking about when you're telling this particular story, or there are some times where the candidate just feels more comfortable talking to me about a personal issue. And so the big thing is, when you're seeking out consultants and when you're seeking out people to work on your campaign, you're going to spend a lot of time with these people. They're going to get to know all the good about you and all the bad about you. And part of their job as a campaign strategist is to figure out how to inoculate you and the bad. And so having a rapport, having that relationship, makes a whole lot of sense. We do need to do a better job from a professional standpoint of political consultants of bringing up the next generation and opening up those doors for women, but also women of color. And as we look at where the state is going, where our population is going, we need to make sure we have strategists who are in the room. So for those who are on the call tonight, I will do an informational interview with any young woman who wants to be a consultant, wants to be a strategist, wants to be a campaign manager, wants to be a fundraiser, because it's important. We need to demystify the process of how to take activism and take the work for social justice and find a way to get you paid for it. Because not all of us are going to run for office, but all of us can work together to make sure we can get those women in office. And so that ecosystem is incredibly important. The other thing I will say just quickly is when women run, especially in primaries where maybe people have been, where other candidates maybe have the luxury of spending a lot of time within the infrastructure, for activists and for endorsers and for political, gatekeepers to keep an open mind, and donors the same thing. Just because somebody hasn't been around doesn't mean they don't bring value to a campaign. And so making sure we're not shutting the door on candidacies years in advance is incredibly important. And I know that making sure that we are, having a fair process, that we're allowing for that filing deadline for that candidate who, got the gumption to get going, but maybe he didn't plan for it 3 years in advance, that they still have an opportunity to be heard and to have their story be considered, whether or not, they have the right values for a club's endorsement or an organization's endorsement, but just to give them a shot in the process is an incredibly important thing as we're moving forward and helping women get a leg up in the political campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for your wonderful offer. I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of.
I'm on LinkedIn. Find me.
Katrina, how about you? What's it looking like in the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, such great insights. And I'll say we had a woman I've had 3 women campaign managers. My fundraiser for the last 5 years, Katrina Frank-Pantone, she's a woman. Hunter Phillips is our campaign manager now. And it is so important that we give space for women to get skills, even if it's assistant to something. They'll learn assistant fundraiser, assistant to the campaign manager, volunteer coordinator, treasurer. All these types of positions allow women the opportunity to gain the skills that they need in order to eventually have, the title of campaign manager or fundraiser. I want to address something that I don't think anyone's addressed directly, but just tangentially, and that is pay. So what I have found is one of the obstacles for women running for local office, especially city councils, school boards, water districts, is the pay. Because in some cases, I'll take, for example, the city of Costa Mesa. City of Costa Mesa, you make like $900 a month, okay? So, and you don't really have the ability in many areas of the city to be able to, unless you're independently wealthy or you're self-employed, like I've been self-employed for many years, or you are, you don't, you have a very, very limited income. You don't need a lot of money to live. It's hard to have the kind of time commitment that to be able to do a good job and to get paid so low. And that low pay is part of this, I think, culture of we don't want to pay people to do the job of public service. And I do think if we expect women, young people, people who are actually working regular jobs to be able to participate in local government, we must start undoing that issue of you shouldn't get paid to serve the community. I mean, I've been fortunate. I had my own job and my own law firm, and so the pay wasn't an issue for me. But there are individuals, as we start looking at redistricting and district elections, there's neighborhoods where the average income is like $30,000 a year, and you cannot expect a person to be able to give 30 hours a week and not go to work and get paid to pay their bills. So I just think we have to start thinking about that, talking about it, and looking into it. I mean, I was the first pregnant woman on the planning commission. I was the first woman directly elected mayor for Costa Mesa, first woman Democrat on the county supervisors. So trying to pave the way, but during that process, also pointing out how hard it is for women to take time off work, to, if you have to choose between going to the parent teacher conference or attending a ribbon cutting because you only get 1 hour a day off of work, then you're going to go to the parent teacher conference. And so helping women, filling in that gap, like Patrice said, is going to be so critical for us to sustain women staying in elected office. And one other thing I'll say, I think everyone wants to start at the top, like I'm going to run for mayor, but you gain so much if you just start somewhere. If you're not ready to run for mayor or city council, then join a committee, join a commission, get appointed to something, start to get to know the staff for the agency that you're appointed to, start to make a name for yourself in the community on some type of issue that you care about. Maybe it's more parks in low park place areas. Maybe it's filling the gaps for active transportation. Maybe it's something as simple as providing childcare at the local community after school program so that parents can participate in community activism. I mean, whatever it is, find something that you stand for and that you can start to become known for. And don't be afraid. This is something that women, I think, tend to do. And I know that Betty, you know what I'm talking about. Don't be afraid to ask for money. We tend to be afraid to ask for money, like it's disrespectful, it's wrong. But if you want to make a difference and be in the game, you have to ask for money because you have to be able to run your campaign. These things are expensive. I mean, I raised $600,000 in 3 months for the special election. We have to raise $1 million for re-election. And so you have to be willing to ask for money. And for new candidates, I say, write a list of 100 people that will give you $100 to kick off your campaign, and then go, just do it.
That's great. Thank you, Katrina. And thank you for giving voice to some very, very real barriers and the pay.
I have one more thing about the pay. Sorry.
Yes.
So my campaigns always paid W-2. We are W-2. We pay our employees as employees. So that way they can participate in the system, all their deductions. So I encourage all candidates to make sure that you're doing W-2 real employee positions.
Thank you. No, thank you. And this is where I think, just some of the barriers, the challenges we've talked about. I actually am very hopeful that as more women run, that we are going to change the rules of the game. No more just kind of, marginalizing women in the space at any level in terms of lifting up a campaign. And certainly not after a woman's been elected to actually serve. Let's be sure that this is actually providing a livelihood for the amount of time that they're going to devote to what they're going to be doing in their elected position. We're getting a little bit low on time, but I wanted to just address this question because I think one of the barriers for women, particularly as we're seeing more women of color, and obviously for myself, I know this is an issue, and Melanie and others have probably experienced this, but just some of the kind of cultural orientations that women bring to running for office. And Danielle, I know just kind of money, message, mail. I mean, all the kind of prerequisites of what makes a winning campaign. But how has that changed in terms of the different experiences and narratives that people are bringing to the table in terms of their candidacies?
Sure. So I think it's, what we're seeing is you have to meet people where they're at. And we are in an environment where people are getting information from very different places. People have also changed the way they vote. We are now in a system where 100% of people are voting by mail. They're all getting a ballot. And so there's options for how you return that ballot, but ultimately the voting experience is, we're moving away from being vote on one day, stand in the ballot box, hope you remember what what they're doing, right? So the conversation now becomes, how's that voting moment happening around a kitchen table? And are there family involved? And where's the stack? Are you in the stack of mailers? Are you, when they're Googling you, does your website come up? So all the technical aspects of a campaign have become far more sophisticated. And what I am finding, like, you have to do everything. You have to be on Twitter. You have to be on Facebook. You have to be on Instagram. Sometimes you have to learn TikTok because you're in a college town and your voters are on TikTok and that's where you're going to reach them. So it's really kind of figuring out, for the district that you're running in and for the people you want to represent, what are their life experiences and how are they interacting with information, and determine your budget and determine your, targeting that way. So, don't fall into the trap of doing what everybody else is doing. Really just focus on what works in your community. How do people spend their time? And then how do you make sure that by election day, you're the person that they're marking on their ballot? And certainly I'm a mail consultant, but that I can't stress enough that new voting moment happening in somebody's living room, and every single one of your voters has a mailbox.
Absolutely. No, terrific. Thank you. We are winding down our hour. It's gone by so fast, and I want to just be sure we get pearls of wisdom from each of you. And I know there are a number of women who are joining us in the virtual audience this evening who are thinking about running for office. And I really want to, just with the richness of all of you here, have each of you offer a piece of advice about just what anyone who's thinking about running for office should be thinking about and what could be helpful. So Patrice, I'm going to start with you.
I'm going to say that for every woman who is listening and has thought about it, you can do this. Women are people who, if you want to learn something new, what do? We go to Google, how to run for office, how to buy a car, how to ride a bike, whatever that is. You know enough about how you run your household, how money works, how budgets work. All of those things are transferable skills. You don't have to do anything else except for take your lived experience, your professional expertise, and go out and run. Because men get up on Tuesday and decide to run for office. Doesn't matter what the job is, what they know about it, if they know anything about it at all, and people will vote for them. So if you actually know about the subject, know about the policy issues, and know about what you're talking about, people are going to vote for you. Do not deny them the opportunity to vote for you. So go out and run. Don't second guess yourself. Don't put any parameters on it, but go ahead and do it now.
Thank you, Patrice. Katrina. Oops, you're on mute.
The best advice I can give, other than what I've already said, is be your true self, be your authentic self. Even people who might disagree with you on an issue or another, they are more likely to vote for you if they know they can trust you. And people trust people in general who they know are being truthful. They're just being who they are. They have a purpose and they're fighting for that purpose. So that's my best advice. Just be authentic, be yourself. Don't try to be constrained by some stereotypical kind of a perception of what an elected official is supposed to be. Just be yourself, and I think your passion for whatever the reason is you're running will come out, and you'll start gathering supporters because people are attracted to people who are real.
Thanks, Katrina. Really appreciate it. Danielle.
So first, you're qualified. The basics for running for office, the barriers to it are very, very low. You're already qualified. You're more than qualified. And also focus on money, endorsements, and votes. Those are the 3 keys to your victory. At the end of the day, campaigns are math. You have to win 50% plus 1. You don't need 100% of the vote. But what you do need is you need to fund a campaign to get your message out. You need people to say, I'm with you and I support you, and you need to win that 50% plus 1 vote. So money, endorsement, votes.
Thank you. Yep, the basic ingredients. Melanie.
I have to plug Apply to Emerge California. So many sisters are here on this call. They'll tell you to apply as well. Our deadline for the next class of 22, our 20th class in our history, is September 1st, so it's coming up. And then secondly, say it out loud to someone who lives outside your house. So many Emerge California sisters tell me that the moment they stood up and said it for the first time out loud to people outside their house, it made it real. And the support they got and that they heard from others propelled them forward. Say it out loud.
Excellent. Thank you. I just realized that probably as someone in office, I should probably answer my own question. I agree with all of my sisters on this panel, but what I also will say is we each know ourselves best. And so you're going to be subject to a lot of judgment, just a lot of criticism. And, and you do end up kind of growing a pretty thick skin about, just how to stay focused and win. But just know that at your core, you know yourself best. And so keep that as your compass. I just need to first say thank you to all of you, to Melanie, to Katrina, Danielle, Patrice. Thank you so much for a rich conversation. I want to thank all of the folks in the audience who have joined this conversation. And this tells me that we're ready to get more women elected. There's just a lot of conversation in the chat that's happening. And I want to close by reminding everyone here that we must do everything we can to stop the Republican recall. I just feel like this is this thing coming in sideways that has us distracted. And frankly, we can't afford to be distracted. We need to do our part in joining many of the phone banks and the friend banks that are being organized by the California Democratic Party. Links are being added to the chat as we speak. And most importantly, I want to thank the California Democratic Party staff for their work behind the scenes to put this together, and our ASL interpreters, our captioner, and once again, our stellar panelists. So thank you. And I want to just remind everyone, we hope to see you tomorrow for our salon conversation about the Muslim American political experience in California. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.